Hi everyone, yeah, welcome back. Good to see you again. You're looking well. Get yourself a drink and a seat up front. We're going to get started. But first, I want to just say that I'm looking forward to this sip because the power's been out for most of the day, and yeah, this is the first hot drink I've had in a couple of hours now. So yes, the show is on. It's all been happening, and now you want to know. But before we can start, we must begin with hello. My name is Sean, your host and fellow. Now grab hold your beverage, your mind just as quick. We're building up for our best sip. So join me now for the greatest pleasure where we unwind this world together. It's time now. It's time for the sip. Let's do it now. Let's do it quick. Go! Ah, yes, absolutely wonderful. Well, airport security locks down terminal after cat escapes carrier and enters ceiling. Yes, in Istanbul, Turkey, passengers at a major airport in Istanbul experienced hours of delays and confusion after a domestic cat escaped from a travel carrier during security screening and disappeared into the terminal ceiling. According to airport officials, the incident began when the cat's owner was instructed to remove the animal briefly from its carrier during inspection routines. Witnesses say the cat reacted immediately. It achieved escape velocity, one passenger told reporters. Within seconds, the animal reportedly leapt from the owner's arms, sprinted through the checkpoint, climbed a luggage conveyor, and vanished through an opening above the terminal ceiling panels. Security personnel initially believed the cat would emerge quickly. Instead, the situation escalated. Airport staff soon began hearing scratching noises, distant meowing, and movements above the lighting fixtures across multiple sections of the terminal. Passengers described the scenes of growing absurdity as maintenance workers opened ceiling panels, travellers filmed the operation, and periodic cat sightings triggered sudden stampedes of attention. At one point, witnesses claimed the animal briefly poked its head through the ceiling opening, stared directly at the crowd below, and disappeared again. The terminal reportedly erupted in applause. Operations became increasingly complicated because officials feared the cat could damage the wiring and trigger fire alarm systems or fall into restricted security zones. According to reports, airport authorities temporarily removed restricted movements in portions of the terminal while teams attempted to retrieval using food, laser pointers, recorded cat sounds, and improved climbing equipment or improvised climbing equipment, none of which worked. The cat allegedly continued relocating through the ceiling structure faster than the crews could track it. Several passengers reported missed flights due to delays caused by the operation, though many later admitted they stayed voluntarily to see how the story ended. After several hours, the cat finally emerged near a cafe seating area after reportedly being lured down by tuna. Witnesses said the animal appeared calm and completely unharmed and deeply unconcerned about the international incident it had caused. The owner has successfully recovered the cat. Passengers applauded again, and airport officials later reminded travellers to secure pet carriers properly during screening procedures. The cat declined to comment. Meanwhile, over in the US, Al Green has lost his primary. He is quite a distinctive figure that has been involved in so many of the party antics in the House, the Democrat Party antics, I should say. He served as 21 years before losing to Christian Menefee in the Democrat primary. Menefee won by a landslide, 69 to 31. Nice. It has also been touted as a generational change, as Green is 78 and Menefee is less than half of that at 38. The Republicans are also being reshaped day by day. A large part of that is coming down to Trump's endorsements, it seems. Trump apparently endorsed 117 candidates, and all 117 have won so far in the House. Trump also endorsed 19 Senate posts, and all 19 of those have won too. It's the first time that two incumbent US Republican senators have lost their primaries in the same year. Well, not the first time, but the last time it happened was 46 years ago. So, yeah, the Trump train is steaming along at the moment. And Senate Majority Leader Thune is standing on the tracks with nowhere to go. Thune, who is the successor to Mitch McConnell, is largely seen as a divisive force in the Republicans. He's been working against Trump's agenda since his nomination in November 2024. Thune is looked on as McConnell's replacement, but his tenure may be considerably less than Mitch's at this rate. Many of the candidates losing at the moment are called rhinos, and they're Republicans in name only. These are candidates presenting themselves as Republicans, but will often be voting against the consensus of most conservatives, especially the Trump-aligned ones. They're largely seen as pro-establishment and often pro-war figures that have become rather unpopular over the last decade. Meanwhile, over in the UK, and this is from Ground News, UK officials have suggested a single market for goods with Europe. Officials proposed establishing a UK-EU single market for all goods to deepen post-Brexit economic ties, says the BBC understands. The ambitious plan has not been taken forward following scepticism from the European Commission. Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer have publicly advocated for closer economic relationship with the EU, aiming to move beyond the existing negotiations on specific sectors like food and energy. British business groups briefed on the proposal noted that the Commission rejected the plan, citing conflicts with established red lines like freedom of movement, which remain non-negotiable. Following the recent King's speech, the government introduced the European Partnership Bill to align laws in negotiated sectors, while the Commission indicated that they see scope to deepen industrial defence cooperation, citing British desire for Ukraine loan talks, which I think is also questionable. So the 48%ers are still pushing forward with the EU reintegration. It is interesting that even though the majority supported Brexit, which probably has an even larger majority now, or a larger support I should say, that the government is still trying to shimmy its way back into the bloc. UK officials had presented a proposal that was so pro-EU that the EU themselves had to say it was a bad idea. So this is one of the main proposals now trying to realign the UK and the EU, even at a time when many EU parties are falling out of love with the EU. Right-leaning parties have been doing increasingly well, especially in places like Germany with the AfD, who have said that they would leave the EU if they gain power. And they've become much more successful recently, especially coming off the back of terrible jobs numbers in Germany since the start of the year. I think they've lost about 500,000 jobs since January, which is considerable. Still on from Ground News, Ofgem to reveal the July energy price cap as bills set to rise. This is in the UK. Ofgem is the UK energy regulator. On Wednesday, the regulator Ofgem will reveal the annual price cap for July to September for typical dual-fuel households across England, Scotland and Wales. Energy costs have surged after Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping route through which a fifth of the world's oil and gas passes. Analyst Cornwall Insight predicted last week that the cap will rise by £209 to £1,850 from July 1st, a 13% increase from the £1,641 annual rate at the moment. Chancellor Rachel Reeves stopped short of immediate energy measures, though the government insisted tackling the affordability crisis is our number one priority. Campaigners warned of an extremely difficult winter. So, what she actually means by tackling affordability is pushing some of the burden of that cost onto the taxpayer. So you have energy being imported into the UK, and quite a lot of the energy that the UK uses is actually imported. And it means that you're paying market rates for it. The market's not going to discount their rates. You're paying internationally. So it only means that the caps are there on how much people on the other side are paying. But that shortfall has to come from somewhere. And at the moment, that's the UK taxpayer. Even though your monthly bill may look cheaper, the annual tax bill will be much higher. But people don't often equate the two because tax gets lumped with all sorts of other things. So, and also remember that not everyone pays the full rate of tax either. So, it is benefiting some a lot more than others. This is essentially still the long march of pushing a lot of this responsibility onto middle-class taxpayers. There's often, very low income and very high income people will not pay their sort of, share, or they call it the share of tax, but some of them don't even pay tax at all. They've got some good schemes, some good friends in high places. So during the energy crisis of 2022 to 2024, they added an additional £40 billion onto the tax bill, which is quite substantial. That's a lot of doctors and nurses that could have been funded with that money. UK government, and specifically the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, designed and funded the scheme. So, yeah. We'll have to see how that one works out. Meanwhile, Peter Thiel is working on floating data centers in the ocean, Joe Wilkins from Futurism reports. This is an Owen Gregorian story. Data centers are a hot topic at the moment, and pardon the pun, and many people are starting to push back on them. With more than half the data centers planned to open in 2026 either severely delayed or cancelled, the former PayPal CEO has reportedly dumped $140 million into Panthalassa, a $1 billion US-based startup looking to build a fleet of floating data centers. In his announcement of the deal, Thiel deployed some UFO-sounding language to promote the project. The future demands more compute than we can imagine, he said. Extraterrestrial solutions are no longer science fiction. Panthalassa has opened the ocean frontier. According to Fortune, the company plans to deploy an experimental data center fleet in northern Pacific Ocean sometime this year. By 2027, the company plans to launch its first commercially viable installation, a bobbing data center powered by the ocean waves. So yeah, there's a lot of dynamics at play in the data center world. Have a quick slurp of my fresh set of tea. Yeah, there are a lot of concerns about the data centers at the moment, especially around water use, electricity, and location. People don't want them in their backyards. Water is one that often causes a lot of, is often cited as a huge problem. But largely, really, that's largely overstated with modern data centers. Many of the new ones have actually got closed loop systems, so the water just recirculates and within itself. It'll only use a minimal amount of additional water, just for toilets and other services in the center. But the actual cooling is often done through closed loop systems now. There are some open water coolers which aren't really that good, but they do tend to be the kind of older systems, and some in certain areas that are where it's difficult to have otherwise. But power for me is probably the big one, because that these centers do require a huge amount of power, and a lot of energy of that comes from the US grid at the moment. And the US grid itself is still trying to catch up, really. There'll have to be a huge investment in new generation capacity, and it takes quite a long time to bring new power stations online. And there'll probably need to be a few dozen constructed to meet demand, I'd say. Personally, I'd like to see more efforts made into capturing and reusing the heat from these installations. Often when the computers are working, they'll be working at maximum capacity, and that generates a lot of heat. Most of the time that just gets escaped or processed through air conditioning to sort of be pushed outside. Heat storage systems and transfer systems are still quite niche, but they look like they could be fairly simple to bolt onto something like a data center. That means you can kind of recover some of the costs, and if you can reuse that heat energy and the jobs it will create on those sites as well, the additional jobs I should say, because these centres do create work across the board. The technicians and the security guards and the maintenance, the cleaning staff that go in to look after these sites, they all have to keep them operational. Another small issue is just the supply of hardware, which is currently, there's huge demand at the moment because so many of these centres are looking to go up. It's okay to say, that you've got the space and you've got the water and the energy, but if you can't fill it with the hardware, then, you still got nothing at the end of the day. And yeah, I think many of those concerns are probably being amplified by foreign actors somewhat. If I were a competitor to the US and in the AI race, I'd probably want the local population to start, fighting against the data centers too, try and slow down the progress a bit. But yeah, in terms of these bobbing data centers themselves, it is a cool idea. Again, pardon the pun. I'm fairly unsure about how well that'll actually work, though. Mainly because access to those data centers will become, very difficult, and you probably need people on site quite regularly. Your engineers and anybody else that's looking after it can only really get there by boat and helicopter now. Also, wave power is something that I'm really keen to see more on, but because it's basically like free mechanical energy at that point, and it's also available 24/7. It's not like wind, which will disappear, and sun that'll disappear. Tidal motion is pretty much constant. So it has been notoriously hard to make wave-based power, though, mainly because the ocean water becomes it's quite salty, and it's notoriously hard on equipment. Plus, there's access and maintenance issues and all that stuff. The same problems that you'd have for the physical data center that would be sort of floating on above. There's not really any viable large-scale commercial energy systems that I'm aware of that use wave power on its own. So especially something that can feed a hungry data center, power requirements are going to be fairly large. So I'm pretty skeptical of that. Most of the offshore power comes from like offshore wind farms, and now offshore solar is becoming a thing. But yeah, there's still not at the scale that would be required to power a data center, I'd say. It'd be really cool if they could get the wave power working, though. Ultimately, you have to try these things and see if it works and why doesn't it work, and find out where the limitations are. Maybe the limitation isn't the wave at that point. Maybe it is just that the water and everything is just too corrosive to the hardware inside. But yeah, I wish Peter well, and I hope that he's successful with this endeavor. But I'm certainly glad it's not my money in it. Let me put it that way. Meanwhile, over in X, still Owen Gregorian is reporting that the Chinese firm launches a humanoid robot for daily household chores. This is reported by Jijo Malayil from Interesting Engineering. The robot features a safety system that instantly stops movement upon contact with people or pets in family homes. Chinese tech firm Giga AI has unveiled what is described as the first commercial robot butler, the Sealight S1. The company says initial 100 pilot units will be deployed to staff at the end of the month, and plans a wider rollout in Wuhan, offered free of charge in the first half of 2027. Giga AI is a startup founded in 2023 and backed by Huawei's investment arm. The system has been created in collaboration with state-supported robotics research organizations, including Hubei Humanoid Robot Innovation Center and Hubei Humanoid Robotics Industrial Alliance. The Sealight S1 is a two-armed wheeled robot, humanoid robot, that the company describes as the first general-purpose home robot. In demonstrations, it has been shown performing a range of tasks, including chopping vegetables, frying eggs, loading a washing machine, hanging laundry, making a bed, opening curtains, according to the Fast company. So yeah, looking at the videos, it does look like it's capable of doing quite a few different chores. I don't get the impression it's fully capable of doing them all, though. When it makes the bed, for example, it's just kind of rearranging the top duvet. You don't see it kind of changing the bed sheets or pillowcases, because that is a much more technically difficult task and requires much stronger and much more engaging force. It was pretty impressive to see it chop the vegetables and tackle the frying egg, though. Even though the frying egg was already cracked, and it's not that difficult to for it to kind of pour it out and pick up the pan and pour it back onto a plate. But it's a little bit more than we've seen from other robot manufacturers. And as people often say, this is the worst it will ever be. Improvements are happening all the time, and it may be at the point where it's good enough for some people to do lighter tasks. I, for one, welcome our robot butler overlords, and will look forward to having one or two of them myself. Just maybe not these initial ones. And with that, it brings me to the end of my notes. And all I'll say for that is one final thought is always have a backup plan. In my case today, that is backup power, so I could still be able to work. Life has a way of throwing curveballs at you, and it always helps to have a few extra gloves in your back pocket. Also, you never know when your backup plan may end up becoming a very lucrative main plan. Having it just gives you options. So, yeah, just go through it, basically. And with that, I will wish you well and say see you later. Cheers.